The impacts of climate change are increasingly evident. For instance, extreme weather conditions associated with global warming, like heat wave, heavy rainfall and flood, rising sea level, and super typhoon, etc., affect various places, including Hong Kong, built environment, and infrastructure. Both the public and private sectors have to step up climate actions. Let me briefly describe what the government has been doing in this regard in 3 recent stages. Firstly, pre-COP21 stage. Before the 2015 United Nations Climate Change Conference, or COP21 held in Paris, the government had published the Hong Kong's Climate Change Report 2015 in November 2015. It outlined the work of the government and the key private sector stakeholders in responding to climate change. It also sought to engage the efforts of the general public in combating climate change. The purpose of this document is to provide a comprehensive account of Hong Kong's climate actions, including mitigation, adaptation, and resilience prior to COP21. Climate change mitigation or decarbonization refers to the efforts to reduce or prevent emissions of greenhouse gases. Climate change adaptation refers to the efforts to anticipate the adverse effects of climate change and take appropriate actions to prevent or minimize the damage or risk. Climate change resilience refers to the efforts to cope and absorb climate change-related stresses and maintain the functional operation of public services and economic and social activities. In May 2015, the government also unveiled the Energy Saving Plan for Hong Kong's Built Environment 2015 to 2025 plus. It set a new target of reducing Hong Kong's energy intensity by 40% by 2025. The plan was the first ever energy-saving blueprint for Hong Kong. It analyzed the energy use in Hong Kong and set out the policy, strategy, target, and key actions that will help Hong Kong achieve the new target. In Hong Kong, buildings account for about 90% of the city's electricity use. Promoting green buildings and enhancing energy efficiency in buildings should be one of our top priority decarbonization tasks. Second, post-COP21 stage. With the positive outcome of COP21 in late 2015, the chief executive announced that in the 2016 policy address the establishment of an interdepartmental steering committee under the chairmanship of the Chief Secretary for Administration, i.e. the government's number 2 to steer and coordinate the climate action of various bureaus and departments. The key task of the steering committee on climate change, SCCC, was to formulate long-term climate strategies to meet a new carbon reduction target for 2030 and to review the scope for enhancing mitigation, adaptation, and resilience actions in Hong Kong. Subsequently, in January 2017, the government announced that the Hong Kong's Climate Action Plan 2030 Plus outlined the government's longer-term action in combating climate change and setting out the carbon emission reduction target for 2030. The government's target was to reduce Hong Kong's carbon intensity by 65 to 70% by 2030 compared with the 2005 level. Key climate actions were to reduce coal-fired electricity generation, apply renewable energy on a wider and larger scale, make our infrastructure and buildings, both new and existing buildings in the public and private sectors, more energy efficient, support low-carbon mobility, strengthen the climate readiness of the city as a whole, cool the city through measures such as wind environment and landscaping design, and partner with stakeholders so that our community could be climate resilient in the long run. In the process of decarbonization, changing the fuel mix would be an effective means of achieving the carbon reduction target. The general public, including building owners, had to be prepared and accept the tariff impact arising from such a change. The SCCC had also set up the Climate Change Working Group on Infrastructure, to coordinate efforts among works departments to address the risk of climate change. The working group would update infrastructure and building design standards and review resilience of existing infrastructure, etc. Among others, the impact of the two super typhoons seriously affecting Hong Kong in 2017 and 2018 offered lessons to the working group to review the risks of climate change on our buildings and construction. Third, COP26 stage. The 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, or COP26, will be held in Glasgow, UK, between late October and mid-November. The government would announce the updated Hong Kong's climate action plan prior to COP26, as set out in the current Hong Kong's Climate Action Plan 2030+. We are moving towards the 2030 carbon reduction target. Hong Kong's carbon emissions reached its peak in 2014, and the carbon intensity in 2019 was about 35% lower than that in the baseline year of 2005. This achievement has been made possible by the implementation of the carbon reduction measures set out in the Climate Action Plan, including our investment in low-carbon technologies and infrastructure. Looking beyond 2030, the 2020 policy address announced that Hong Kong would strive to achieve carbon neutrality before 2050. In 2021, the government set up the new Steering Committee on Climate Change and Carbon Neutrality, SCCCN, under the chairmanship of the Chief Executive. The SCCCN oversees climate policies and implementation of strategies and actions, and brings climate matters to the attention of the highest level of the government. Apart from the new Climate Action Plan to be promulgated soon, the government has already promulgated 3 environmental blueprints this year, which include the Waste Blueprint for Hong Kong 2035, Hong Kong's first roadmap on the popularization of electric vehicles, and the Clean Air Plan for Hong Kong 2035. In view of the fact that electricity generation and use, transport, and waste management are the 3 major carbon emission sources in Hong Kong, these blueprints lay a solid foundation for the formulation of more comprehensive and ambitious climate actions to be announced in the new Climate Action Plan. The 4th environmental blueprint in 2021 will be on the updated climate actions. It will set out more proactive strategies and measures to deeply reduce carbon emissions, zero carbon energy, low carbon planning and green building, new energy transport, development of waste-to-energy facilities, as well as adoption of new technologies and innovations, etc., are critical parts of our strategy for building a more sustainable economy. In the deep decarbonization journey, green and sustainable finance, ESG and other relevant reporting, circular economy, and green jobs and talent training, etc., are also very important elements to help Hong Kong reduce the risk of climate change while creating positive economic and social opportunities at the same time. The forthcoming plan will also report the progress of the Climate Change Working Group on Infrastructure, which has been conducting studies to review climate change parameters affecting the built environment and infrastructures, and has completed updating relevant design manuals since 2018, taking into account the reports published by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. Hong Kong has done a substantial amount of adaptation work in dealing with heavy rain, strong winds, landslides, flooding, as well as tackling other extreme weather events, and will continue the effort as needed. The working group is willing to share the relevant information, including climate change risk data, with the business sector, so that together we can make our built environment more climate adaptive and resilient. To conclude, climate change has become an imminent global challenge that does call for not only timely actions, but also the vision to develop long-term strategies that can effectively capitalize on the opportunities arising from technological and business innovations. The climate crisis can be effectively dealt with only if the governments, the private sector, and the civil society join forces for decisive action on climate change, mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. Business as usual is no longer an option. Please support the forthcoming Hong Kong's Climate Action Plan 2050 and join us as carbon neutral partners. Thank you.